I'm Amelia Stone, 32, and just 3 hours ago, I became the unacknowledged owner of my family's venerable industrial enterprise, a legacy spanning a century. Still performing my duties from my remote workstation, my father, Robert, sneered mockingly across our elaborate harvest feast table, his gaze filled with disdain for my casual attire. I simply nodded, feeling the subtle vibration of my phone in my pocket. Discreetly, I glanced down. Acquisition of Sentinel Industries complete. You now command 100% of your family's corporation. I lifted my eyes to my father's self-satisfied expression and offered a small, knowing smile. He had absolutely no inkling of the seismic shift that was about to occur. Before I delve into the intricate journey of how I transitioned from being the perennial family disappointment to seizing ownership of their entire legacy, I invite you to share your viewing location in the comments. And if you've ever felt utterly underestimated by the very individuals who should have championing you, please show your support by hitting that like and subscribe button. To be born a Sterling meant inheriting not just privilege and prestige, but also a suffocating weight of expectations. Our family estate, a sprawling monument to ancestral wealth and deeply ingrained traditions, occupied a vast expanse in the serene countryside of Vermont. Yet, what outsiders perceived as the quintessential image of a prosperous, harmonious family was, in reality, a meticulously designed, cold, and emotionless mechanism solely dedicated to perpetuating the formidable legacy of Sentinel Industries. Sentinel Industries was more than just a company. It was the very essence of our family's identity. My grandfather, Arthur Sterling, built it from the ground up in 1949, transforming a modest workshop into a formidable manufacturing powerhouse. His stern portrait hung prominently in our grand foyer, his unyielding eyes seemingly following every movement, serving as a perpetual reminder of the uncompromising Sterling standard. My father, Robert, assumed control when I was merely a child, expanding the company's reach further with an iron fist and ruthless, uncompromising business tactics. He governed both the corporation and our household with the exact same authoritarian approach. Any questioning of his decisions was tantamount to an act of outright treason. Growing up, our dinner table conversations revolved exclusively around the day's stock market performance and the intricacies of impending corporate deals. Business is about absolute dominance, Amelia. The Sterlings don't just compete, we conquer, he would often lecture, emphatically striking the polished mahogany dining table for added emphasis. My mother, Clara, performed her designated role with impeccable precision, embodying the perfect executive wife. She meticulously hosted flawless corporate events, cultivated crucial social connections with other prominent business families, and never, under any circumstances, dared to contradict my father. Her personal advice to me consisted primarily of meticulous instructions on how to dress appropriately for important board member dinners and which specific fork to use at formal business luncheons. A Sterling woman perfectly reflects the company's image, Amelia. She would gently remind me whenever I prioritized personal comfort over societal convention or traditional etiquette. Appearance is everything. My brother, David, was universally regarded as the golden child, a graduate of Princeton's prestigious business school, a celebrated captain of the university's debate team, and eagerly absorbing every single word of my father's business philosophy. By the tender age of 18, he was already attending crucial board meetings. By 22, he had been assigned his own opulent office at headquarters, complete with a dedicated personal secretary. The succession plan was abundantly clear to everyone within the family and the company. David truly understands what it means to embody the Sterling name, my father would proudly boast to various business associates, completely oblivious to my silent, almost invisible presence at the very same table. My sister, Sophia, had chosen the path of least resistance, diligently conforming to precisely what was expected of her. She pursued studies in corporate finance, entered into a strategic marriage with the son of one of my father's influential golf partners, and dedicated her life to maintaining meticulous social appearances and orchestrating elaborate charity galas that consistently benefited the family's public image. "Why can't you just try to blend in?" she would whisper to me during awkward family functions, genuinely perplexed by my inherent resistance to conformity. And then there was me, the inexplicable family puzzle piece that simply refused to fit, no matter how relentlessly they tried to force it into their predetermined mold. From an early age, I challenged everything. Why did our manufacturing plants persist in employing methods that generated such immense waste? Why were we not actively exploring digital innovations when our competitors were? Why did we treat our factory personnel as mere expendable resources instead of invaluable team members? Each inquiry I posed was met with either a condescending chuckle or a stern, disapproving glare. "That's simply not how the industrial world operates, Amelia," my father would retort, never bothering to provide any further explanation or rationale. I exhibited nascent entrepreneurial inclinations early on, launching a local gadget repair enterprise at 14 that, surprisingly, actually yielded a profit. When I proudly showcased my earnings at dinner, my father merely scoffed. "A quaint little endeavor, but true commerce unfolds on a grand scale. Not by mending Mrs. Jenkins' broken tablet," he declared, immediately shifting his attention to David to discuss a significant commercial property acquisition. My mother gently patted my hand in a consoling gesture. "Not everyone is inherently suited for the corporate arena, dear." I still keenly recall the sting of those words, not because they were cruel, but because, in their perception, they were demonstrating kindness by lowering their expectations of my potential. When I was 16, I devised a sophisticated scheduling framework that would have significantly streamlined production at one of our main facilities. I dedicated weeks to crafting a meticulously detailed proposal, complete with projected cost savings and a comprehensive implementation strategy. My father grudgingly consented to permit me to present it at a family dinner. This could potentially reduce operational downtime by 25% and save approximately $500,000 in the initial year alone. I elucidated, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. My father perfunctorily skimmed the first page, then set it aside with a dismissive gesture. "Theoretical constructs from a mere adolescent. Rather charming, but we shall adhere to the established systems engineered by accredited professionals." Subsequently, I discovered that David had presented a strikingly analogous system 2 years later, one unmistakably derived from my own proposal, and my father had promptly implemented it, lavishing praise upon my brother's astute business acumen. By my final year of secondary education, the pervasive pattern had become starkly clear. Within the Sterling family, an individual's worth was meticulously gauged by their direct contribution to Sentinel Industries, and in their collective estimation, I possessed absolutely nothing of tangible value to offer. The black sheep, the perpetual dreamer, the profound disappointment. I commenced formulating my escape from the stifling confines of Sentinel Industries long before my departure for university. I was resolute in my determination to construct something entirely of my own, something inherently meaningful, something that would unequivocally prove them mistaken. The university application process evolved into my initial true battleground for personal autonomy. The Sterling tradition was unambiguous. Wharton for undergraduate business studies, then Harvard for the Master of Business Administration. My father had already meticulously arranged the alumni connections, orchestrated the necessary financial contributions, and positioned the influential levers ready for activation. "Business administration is woven into your very essence, Amelia," he adamantly insisted. "Even if you never oversee Sentinel, you must comprehend the operational intricacies of our domain." I submitted my application to Caltech for computer science instead. The evening I formally announced my audacious decision at dinner remains one of the most intensely charged memories of my nascent adult life. My father's countenance flushed to a hue of deep crimson I had never before witnessed. "Computer science!" he sputtered, barely containing his indignation. "What precisely do you intend to accomplish with that? Mending people's personal computers for a livelihood?" "Technology represents the forthcoming epoch of manufacturing," I endeavored to clarify. "Automation, process optimization, environmental sustainability." "Sustainability," my father interjected, almost recoiling from the term. Another fashionable catchphrase from individuals who have never been compelled to fulfill a production quota or placate demanding shareholders. David smirked across the table. Allow her to dabble with computing devices, father. She was never destined for involvement in authentic commerce anyway. My mother, ever the facilitator of harmony, intervened. Robert, perhaps Amelia could someday furnish a novel perspective to our information technology department. That particular utterance represented the closest approximation to support I had ever been granted, though even that came laden with the implicit assumption that I would eventually join the ranks of Sentinel. I departed for Caltech with my father's concluding remarks reverberating in my consciousness. When this transient phase concludes, there will still be a designated place for you within the familial enterprise. Nothing of significant import, naturally, but something entirely suitable. Caltech felt akin to inhaling invigorating, crisp air after years spent in an oppressive, stagnant chamber. For the inaugural time, I was enveloped by individuals who prioritized genuine innovation above rigid tradition, who perceived technology as a powerful instrument for positive transformation, rather than solely a conduit for profit. I flourished within this stimulating environment, my self-assurance burgeoning with each triumphant project and every encouraging word from my professors. I encountered Sarah Jenkins during freshman orientation, and she swiftly became the steadfast, supportive confidant I had always lacked. Unlike my family, she genuinely listened when I articulated my ideas. "You are truly brilliant, Amelia," she would affirm with unfeigned enthusiasm. "The manner in which you seamlessly interconnect commercial challenges with technological remedies, it is as though you possess fluency in both languages." During my sophomore year, I secured a coveted internship at Nexus Innovations, a nascent enterprise dedicated to formulating efficiency solutions for the industrial sector. My immediate supervisor, Dr. Helen Hayes, swiftly emerged as the mentor I had always yearned for. In stark contrast to my father, she perceived my inquisitive nature not as an act of insubordination, but as an invaluable manifestation of critical thinking. "Never cease questioning why something cannot be improved," she advised me sagely. "The precise moment you acquiesce to the notion that that's simply how it's done is the precise moment innovation perishes." I consistently returned to Nexus Innovations each subsequent summer, assiduously absorbing knowledge pertaining to sustainable business methodologies and cutting-edge technological advancements. I witnessed firsthand as they transmuted struggling factories into remarkably efficient, environmentally conscious operations, all while concurrently augmenting profitability. It was the tangible realization of everything I had fruitlessly endeavored to convey to my family. Meanwhile, familial holiday gatherings at home became progressively more uncomfortable affairs. Each academic break commenced with relentless interrogations concerning when I would finally embrace a serious career, and invariably concluded with thinly veiled expressions of profound disappointment. During Christmas dinner in my junior year, my father raised his glass for a ceremonial toast. "To David, who successfully orchestrated the Hawthorne deal this quarter, securing our largest account to date, and to Sophia, whose philanthropic gala amassed over $2.5 million for underprivileged youth initiatives, with numerous Sentinel clients in attendance. Sterling excellence persists." I remained seated, unacknowledged, rendered invisible despite graduating prematurely with the highest academic distinctions and already receiving lucrative employment offers from prominent technology corporations. Following my graduation, I received a rather patronizing offer from Sentinel Industries, a position within the information technology department, reporting to a manager who had been with the company for 3 decades and still exclusively utilized an antiquated flip phone. The remuneration was insultingly meager, particularly when juxtaposed with the substantial salary they had extended to David immediately upon his graduation from university. "It represents a crucial opportunity to prove your capabilities," my father asserted, as if bestowing upon me a magnanimous favor. "You cannot possibly anticipate commencing at the pinnacle simply because you bear the Sterling surname." I promptly declined their offer and instead accepted a position at Quantum Leap Dynamics, a forward-thinking corporation that was actively revolutionizing the manufacturing sector through pioneering artificial intelligence and deeply ingrained sustainable practices. My initial apartment was remarkably compact, a studio in the bustling city of Astoria that could have easily fit into our sprawling family mansion's grand foyer. When my mother paid a solitary visit, my father never once graced it with his presence. She surveyed the modest space with poorly disguised revulsion. "My dear, there is absolutely no necessity for you to reside in such conditions. Simply come and work for Sentinel. We shall establish you in a proper condominium." "I am forging my own distinct path, Mother," I patiently explained. "I must accomplish this on my own terms." She offered a sorrowful smile, clearly convinced that I was committing a grave error. "I merely hope this rebellious phase does not endure for an excessive duration. You are forfeiting your birthright." What she utterly failed to comprehend was that I was, in fact, unearthing my true birthright, not the prestigious Sterling name or the immense power of Sentinel Industries, but my own inherent capabilities, entirely unfettered by the confining expectations of my family. At Quantum Leap Dynamics, I thrived with unparalleled vigor. Within 2 years, I was leading a dedicated team responsible for developing groundbreaking efficiency software that effectively reduced manufacturing waste by an astounding 40%. My annual compensation tripled. I forged invaluable connections throughout the industry with influential individuals who respected me for my intellectual prowess, not merely my surname. And with each subsequent success, the emotional chasm between me and my family widened almost imperceptibly. Holiday gatherings evolved into meticulous exercises in self-restraint as I endured listening to my family's discussions of business strategies that were rapidly becoming obsolete in an increasingly dynamic and evolving marketplace. When I attempted to contribute meaningfully to these conversations, sharing pertinent insights gleaned from my extensive industry experience, I was metaphorically patted on the head. "That approach might be suitable for those minuscule technology startups," my father would dismissively state. "But Sentinel operates on an entirely different echelon. We deal with genuine manufacturing, tangible products, and authentic commerce." By the age of 27, I had ascended to the directorship of sustainable innovation at Quantum Leap, boasting multiple patents under my belt and a burgeoning reputation within the industry. I also harbored a grander vision, a pioneering enterprise that would seamlessly bridge the divide between traditional industrial practices and cutting-edge technological advancements, thereby forging sustainable solutions that did not necessitate the sacrifice of profitability. The decisive impetus arrived during a particularly fraught spring festival dinner, when my father consumed 20 minutes lecturing on the perceived ephemeral nature of flash-in-the-pan technology companies, while David nodded in vigorous agreement. That very evening, I commenced drafting the intricate business blueprint for what would ultimately become Horizon Tech Solutions. The time had arrived to construct something entirely of my own making. Establishing Horizon Tech Solutions necessitated substantial capital. While I had assiduously saved a considerable sum, I required additional funds. Fortunately, my grandmother Beatrice had bequeathed to me a modest inheritance upon her passing. The singular family member who seemed to harbor any conviction that I might indeed forge my own independent trajectory. She had surreptitiously fostered my autonomy, having been somewhat of a nonconformist herself in her youth before being subsumed into the Sterling apparatus through matrimony. "You evoke memories of myself before I assimilated the art of silence," she once whispered to me conspiratorially. "Do not replicate my error." I utilized her $300,000 bequest as foundational seed funding and relocated to an even more diminutive apartment to extend my operational runway. My dining table transmuted into my primary office. My bed served as my impromptu conference room. 18-hour workdays became my unwavering norm as I concurrently developed the foundational software platform and cultivated crucial business connections. When my family eventually became apprised of my modest project, the derision commenced in earnest. "Amelia is now indulging in entrepreneurial pursuits," David announced at the subsequent Harvest Festival. "How utterly charming. What exactly does your company purport to achieve again? My father inquired, his tone unequivocally conveying his belief that it constituted no genuine enterprise whatsoever. I expounded upon our core mission, crafting integrated software and hardware solutions that facilitated the transition of conventional manufacturing companies toward sustainable practices, all while concurrently enhancing efficiency and mitigating costs. So fundamentally, you're peddling elaborate spreadsheets to factories, my brother summarized with a dismissive smirk. Actually, our inaugural product enhanced production by 35% at Caldwell Manufacturing, while simultaneously curtailing their carbon footprint by 30%, I countered. My father waved his hand dismissively. Caldwell is a minuscule operation. Endeavor to implement something of that magnitude at Sentinel's scale. It's mere fantasy. I would be pleased to assemble a comprehensive proposal, I began. Sentinel does not require intervention, especially not from unproven technology, he interrupted. We have endured market fluctuations for nearly a century by adhering to our established methods. Those initial years were relentlessly arduous. For every client triumph, there were scores of rejections. For every incremental stride forward, market volatility, regulatory mandates, or unforeseen obstacles would propel me 2 steps backward. I exhausted the limits of my credit cards, frequently forewent meals, and on one occasion was compelled to choose between remitting rent and dispersing payroll for my nascent 2 employees. I prioritized payroll and resided in my office for 3 weeks. Oliver Thorne joined me 6 months into the venture, assuming the roles of my business partner and operations director. We had previously collaborated at Quantum Leap, and he evinced sufficient faith in my vision to accept a 75% reduction in compensation and labor, predominantly for equity. The manner in which you seamlessly integrate pragmatic commercial solutions with environmental stewardship is genuinely groundbreaking, he observed. Traditional manufacturing is hurtling towards a precipice, and you are constructing a bridge for them. They simply have not yet realized their necessity for it. Incrementally, we assembled a dedicated team of true believers. Liam Reed, an exceptionally gifted programmer capable of translating intricate industrial processes into elegant code. Dr. Chloe Martinez, a brilliant chemical engineer who possessed an innate understanding of how to optimize complex physical systems. Evan Hayes, a perceptive marketing strategist who mastered the lexicon of traditional manufacturing executives. Our inaugural significant breakthrough transpired 18 months into our journey, when we effectively salvaged Northwood Steel from impending bankruptcy by implementing our innovative resource management system. Their chief executive officer swiftly became our most fervent advocate, facilitating access to opportunities that had previously been emphatically denied to us. Yet, at every familial gathering, my burgeoning success was systematically minimized or entirely dismissed. How is your application enterprise progressing? My father would inquire, deliberately mischaracterizing the nature of our business. When I cited our expanding roster of clients, David would promptly counter with Sentinel's latest substantial acquisition. When I articulated our detailed sustainability metrics, my father would shift the conversation to Sentinel's impressive quarterly financial reports. When I meticulously described our groundbreaking technological solutions, my mother would expeditiously change the subject to Sophia's most recent charitable function. The most profoundly painful dismissal transpired after we secured our inaugural multi-million-dollar contract with Crestwood Manufacturing, a direct competitor to Sentinel in specific market segments. Instead of perceiving this as validation of my acute business acumen, my family interpreted it as an act bordering on treason. Consorting with the adversary now, are we? My father stated chillingly. Is this your chosen method of retaliating against me for not spontaneously bestowing upon you an executive role at Sentinel? This is not about Sentinel, I endeavored to clarify. Crestwood was willing to embrace innovation, while you— While I what? He challenged, his voice sharp. While I continue to operate a highly profitable enterprise that provides employment for thousands and has endured the test of time, your minor experiment is enabling our competitors to significantly undercut us. How do you believe that reflects upon you within this family? I departed that dinner prematurely, valiantly suppressing tears of intense frustration. Back in my now properly appointed office, I immersed myself in work with renewed, fierce determination. If they were incapable of recognizing my inherent value, I was resolved to create something so monumentally successful that they would be unequivocally compelled to acknowledge it. Do you comprehend the core issue? Oliver inquired late one evening as we meticulously reviewed expansion strategies. Your family is utterly incapable of perceiving beyond their established paradigm. To genuinely disrupt an industry, one must conceptualize outside its conventional frameworks. That is precisely why external perspectives often engender the most revolutionary transformations. He was entirely correct. My outsider viewpoint, so long perceived as a fundamental weakness within my family, was, in fact, my most formidable strength. I possessed a nuanced understanding of both realms, the entrenched mindset of traditional manufacturing and the transformative technological possibilities that could profoundly redefine it. Over the subsequent 2 years, Horizon Tech Solutions experienced exponential growth. We broadened our scope from purely software solutions into integrated hardware systems, developed proprietary sustainable materials processing techniques, and cultivated a distinguished client roster that included some of the most forward-thinking manufacturers across the nation. We successfully secured a substantial funding round, spearheaded by investors who specifically espouse the principle of conjoining profitability with environmental responsibility. Our company valuation rapidly escalated, hitting $60 million, then an impressive $180 million. We transitioned into legitimate, spacious offices. Our team expanded to 75 individuals, then well over 100. Throughout this entire period of remarkable expansion, my family's attitude remained largely unchanged. When I was prominently featured in Industry Visionaries magazine, my father perfunctorily glanced at the article and remarked, "Decent publicity. Let us observe if you remain relevant in 5 years' time." David's hostility was more overt. Anyone can project success during an economic boom and with external investor capital. The genuine test lies in longevity and operating without constant financial scaffolding. What they remained oblivious to, what I had begun to ascertain through various industry channels, was that Sentinel Industries was grappling with significant escalating challenges. Their obstinate refusal to adapt was finally catching up to them in a marketplace that increasingly prioritized environmental sustainability and sophisticated technological integration. The inaugural public indications of Sentinel's mounting difficulties emerged approximately 3 years into my Horizon Tech journey. Their quarterly earnings report revealed a 15% year-over-year decline. While not catastrophic, this represented a significant setback for a corporation that had consistently demonstrated decades of unwavering growth. My father dismissively attributed it to mere market fluctuations during the subsequent family dinner. Yet I observed the taut line of his mouth and the additional measure of whiskey he poured for himself. David was uncharacteristically reserved that evening, his customary boasts about deals and acquisitions conspicuously absent. Even Sophia's spouse, who worked in finance, continuously checked his phone with discreet urgency. Industry analysis reports began pointedly underscoring Sentinel's resistance to adaptation as a potentially grave long-term liability. Novel environmental regulations were substantially escalating their compliance expenditures, while numerous competitors, some of whom were leveraging Horizon Tech Solutions, were effectively meeting these challenges with greater efficiency. I could clearly discern the inevitable trajectory, even if my family was unwilling or unable to. Sentinel Industries remained a 20th century enterprise, attempting to operate with 20th century methodologies in a 21st century marketplace. I reached a decision that even took me by surprise. I would endeavor to assist them. "Father," I began during a rare moment of solitude in his study after dinner, "I've been monitoring Sentinel's market position, and I believe Horizon Tech could be of assistance. We've developed systems specifically tailored for companies with your manufacturing profile." He abruptly interrupted me with a dismissive wave. "Amelia, I appreciate that your small company is achieving success in its niche, but Sentinel is not in need of intervention. We have successfully navigated market volatilities for nearly a century. This is not merely a fluctuation, I persisted. The entire industry is undergoing a fundamental transformation. Sustainability is no longer solely about environmental responsibility. It has become a matter of economic survival. Our systems could reduce your production costs by at least 35%, while simultaneously ensuring your compliance with the new regulations before their full implementation. My father's expression hardened. So now you purport to be an authority on my business? The very business you chose to abandon. The business you have never spent a single day actually managing. I am not asserting expertise on Sentinel specifically, I stated cautiously. However, I am an authority on manufacturing technology and the practical implementation of sustainability. We have successfully assisted dozens of companies, admittedly smaller companies and different companies, not entrenched legacy operations like Sentinel. He rose, unequivocally signaling the conclusion of our conversation. When you have managed an enterprise for more than 5 minutes, perhaps I shall consider your counsel. Until then, concentrate on your own affairs and leave Sentinel to those who possess a true understanding of its complexities. I departed his study feeling a complex melange of emotions, profound frustration, genuine concern, and a peculiar sense of foreboding. I had sincerely intended to offer assistance, but his intractable pride would not permit it. Meanwhile, Horizon Tech continued its remarkable ascent. We successfully secured a significant round of funding from Verdant Ventures, a highly reputable venture capital firm specializing in sustainable technology investments. Our company valuation soared to $600 million. We expanded our operations internationally, establishing offices in Berlin and Singapore. Industry accolades and widespread recognition flowed in. Victor Coleman, a board member at Sentinel who had consistently exhibited friendliness towards me, reached out for a lunch meeting one day, far from my family's watchful eyes and ears. He spoke with startling candor. Your father refuses to acknowledge it, Amelia, but Sentinel is in serious peril. The company has accumulated substantial debt to maintain a facade of growth. 3 of their major clients are actively contemplating the non-renewal of their contracts. The newly established manufacturing facility in Ohio is hemorrhaging money due to antiquated processes. Why are you divulging this information to me? I inquired, though I strongly suspected his underlying motivation. Victor looked at me steadily. Because you might be the sole individual who both comprehends what is necessary and possesses sufficient concern for the Beaumont heritage to undertake it. Your father and brother are too deeply entrenched in their conventional methodologies to perceive the requisite transformations. I have extended assistance, I responded. They are uninterested. They may soon have no alternative, he replied grimly. There is considerable discussion of seeking external investors, or even a complete sale if the situation does not improve within the next 2 fiscal quarters. The news impacted me more profoundly than anticipated. Despite all prior grievances, Sterling Industries remained my family's legacy, my grandfather's creation, the fount of our name's esteemed reputation. The mere contemplation of its potential failure or its acquisition by some corporate marauder who would systematically strip its assets and dismiss loyal employees was acutely painful. At the subsequent familial gathering, my mother's birthday celebration, I could discern the mounting strain with heightened clarity. My father appeared visibly aged, the lines etched into his countenance more pronounced. David was consuming an excessive amount of alcohol, his customary arrogance replaced by a brittle defensiveness. Even Genevieve seemed subdued. During the dinner, I made one final attempt. I have been reviewing the recent regulations impacting the manufacturing sector. I began cautiously. Here we go, David muttered under his breath. I chose to disregard him. Many companies are grappling with compliance expenditures, yet there exist solutions that can actually transmute these challenges into significant opportunities for modernization and enhanced efficiency. My father's knuckles whitened around his fork. Amelia, Not everyone subscribes to the notion of sacrificing profit for fashionable environmental considerations. That is precisely the point, I pressed. The solutions I am advocating actually augment profitability while simultaneously ensuring compliance. It is no longer an either-or proposition. Is this another sales pitch for your company's services? My father inquired coldly, utilizing a family dinner to solicit prospective clients. The inherent unfairness of his accusations stung deeply. I am genuinely attempting to offer assistance, Father. Sterling is family, despite everything. I do not wish to witness its decline. Decline? David interjected loudly. Who asserts we are declining? We just finalized the Kensington contract last week. I was aware, through my industry sources, that the Kensington contract had been substantially smaller than anticipated and included terms heavily favoring the client, a clear indicator of Sterling's diminished negotiating position. I am pleased to hear that, I stated carefully. However, should you ever wish to discuss how integrating sustainable technology could bolster Sterling's financial performance, I am always available. We shall assuredly contact you if we require counsel on how to manage the enterprise that has thrived successfully since before your birth, my father retorted with absolute finality, effectively concluding the discussion. 2 weeks thereafter, Victor contacted me once more. They are actively seeking buyers, Amelia, discreetly but with earnest intent. Your father would rather divest Sterling than concede it requires fundamental change. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, meticulously scrutinizing the financial reports and industry analyses I had meticulously amassed concerning Sterling Industries. The company retained significant inherent value. Its established client relationships, robust manufacturing facilities, and respected brand reputation possessed worth far beyond its current managerial difficulties. With astute leadership and timely technological integration, it held the potential to flourish once more. An audacious plan began to crystallize in my mind, perhaps even preposterous, but potentially perfect. What if Horizon Tech Solutions were to acquire Sterling Industries? I would need to proceed with extreme circumspection. If my family became aware that I was the prospective buyer, they would unequivocally reject the offer, regardless of its inherent merits. I would necessitate working through intermediaries, perhaps a holding company that meticulously obscured my involvement until the transaction was definitively concluded. This maneuver would serve as the ultimate substantiation of everything I had earnestly endeavored to communicate to them for years, that my vision for the future of manufacturing was not merely viable, but absolutely indispensable. It would effectively salvage Sterling, safeguard its dedicated employees, and finally compel my family to acknowledge that I had been entirely correct throughout. The ethical quandaries troubled me. Was this endeavor primarily about assisting Sterling, or was it a means of proving a point? Was I truly seeking to preserve my family's legacy, or was I pursuing a form of retribution? Could I effectively compartmentalize my business judgment from my intricate emotional history? After days of profound introspection and extensive deliberations with Oliver and our executive leadership team, I arrived at the conclusion that my motivations, while undeniably complex, were fundamentally sound. Sterling represented an advantageous acquisition target for Horizon Tech purely on commercial grounds. The fact that my personal history with the company added an emotional dimension did not, in itself, invalidate the inherent business logic. With the decision firmly established, I commenced the intricate process of assembling the components for what would become the most audacious strategic maneuver of my professional career. By our 5th year of operation, Horizon Tech Solutions had undergone a remarkable transformation from my humble little project into an undeniable industry titan. We provided employment for over 350 individuals across 4 continents. Our distinguished client roster now included manufacturing giants that had once appeared utterly unattainable. Our proprietary technology was systematically reducing industrial waste by millions of tons annually, while simultaneously augmenting profitability for our collaborative partners. We had expanded beyond mere software solutions into sophisticated integrated hardware systems, developing proprietary mechanisms that modernized existing manufacturing equipment at a mere fraction of traditional replacement costs. Our sustainability consulting division was expertly guiding companies through the increasingly intricate regulatory landscape, framing these challenges not simply as compliance obligations, but as crucial competitive advantages. Personal triumphs mirrored professional successes. I transitioned from my minuscule apartment into a spacious, comfortable condominium. Nothing ostentatious, but a stark contrast to the days of sleeping in my office. I received invitations to address attendees at prominent industry conferences, was profiled in prestigious business publications, and was even approached about authoring a comprehensive book on sustainable manufacturing practices. The failure my family had so confidently predicted was now a highly respected industry leader. Throughout this period of monumental growth, I steadfastly upheld the core values that had initially propelled me. We ensured fair living wages for all employees, from the custodial staff to the senior executives. We actively practiced the environmental responsibility we so passionately advocated. We respectfully declined engagements with clients who merely sought to superficially greenwash their public image without committing to substantive, fundamental changes. Eleanor Thorne, CEO of rival tech manufacturer Dynamic Solutions, once remarked at a prominent industry event, "What renders Stone so formidable is that she genuinely believes in the sustainability ethos. She isn't merely adhering to prevailing market trends, she is actively creating them from a deeply held conviction." I accepted it as the sincere compliment it was unequivocally intended to be. Meanwhile, information regarding Sterling's continued deterioration persistently reached me through various confidential channels. Their stock valuation had plummeted by 45% over an 18-month period. They had shuttered one of their older manufacturing facilities and regrettably laid off hundreds of long-standing workers. Major clients were actively defecting to competitors who offered more advanced and demonstrably sustainable solutions. Victor Coleman continued to provide me with updates on the increasingly desperate attempts to salvage the company. "They've brought in 4 different consulting firms, but your father steadfastly rejects any suggestion that necessitates fundamental change. David is vehemently advocating for draconian cost-cutting measures that will only serve to accelerate the decline." Then came the news I had been both anticipating and, paradoxically, dreading. Sterling Industries was officially, albeit discreetly, listed for sale. They were attempting to maintain strict confidentiality to prevent further market devaluation, but they had formally engaged Global Mergers and Acquisitions to identify a suitable buyer. The timing could not have been more fortuitous. Horizon Tech had just successfully concluded a major funding round that provided us with substantial capital specifically earmarked for strategic growth initiatives. We were actively seeking acquisition opportunities to significantly expand our manufacturing capabilities. From a purely commercial perspective, Sterling, despite its inherent problems, possessed valuable assets, established client relationships, and a respectable market position that aligned perfectly with our long-term growth strategy. I immediately convened an urgent meeting with Oliver and our executive leadership team to thoroughly discuss the distinct possibility. Acquiring Sterling would considerably fast-track our hardware division by several years, Oliver pointed out, meticulously scrutinizing the comprehensive analysis we had compiled. Their existing manufacturing capabilities, when synergized with our advanced technology, would forge an unparalleled integrated offering. Dr. Chloe Martinez, now our Chief Technology Officer, nodded in agreement. Their facilities, while dated, are structurally sound. With our proprietary systems meticulously implemented, we could dramatically transform their efficiency metrics within mere months. The brand still retains considerable value despite its recent adversities, added Evan Hayes, our astute marketing director. The Sterling name carries significant weight within traditional manufacturing circles, where we are still perceived as relative newcomers. "Let us address the proverbial elephant in the room," Liam Reed stated bluntly, his gaze direct. "This is, after all, your family's company, Amelia. Can you unequivocally separate the strategic business decision from your personal history?" This was the precise question I had been relentlessly posing to myself for weeks. I believe I can, I responded carefully, choosing my words with precision. However, I also firmly believe we need to approach this acquisition distinctly from a standard corporate takeover. I then meticulously outlined my intricate plan. We would establish a discrete holding company that would effectively obscure Horizon Tech's direct involvement. We would submit the offer exclusively through global mergers and acquisitions, ensuring all communication adhered strictly to proper formalized channels. My name would not appear on any official documents until the finalization of the deal. Won't they ultimately discover your involvement? Oliver inquired, a hint of concern in his voice. Yes, and that is entirely by design, I explained calmly. But by that point, the transaction will have been concluded based solely on its undeniable financial merits, rather than being summarily rejected due to deeply ingrained family politics. Are you certain this is ethically sound? Dr. Martinez asked, her brow furrowed slightly. Not the acquisition itself, that makes sound business sense, but the deliberate concealment of your direct involvement. It was a legitimate query, one I had deliberated upon extensively. In a normal acquisition scenario, no, it would not be ethically appropriate, I conceded. But this particular situation is entirely unique. My family would summarily reject any offer originating from me, regardless of its intrinsic benefits to Sterling, its dedicated employees, and its loyal shareholders. By temporarily removing my name from the process, I am ensuring the offer is evaluated purely on its actual merits. After hours of intense discussion, we reached a unanimous consensus. Horizon Tech would proceed with the acquisition of Sterling Industries through a meticulously crafted holding company, with my direct involvement only to be unveiled after the deal had been definitively finalized. The subsequent weeks were a whirlwind of rigorous financial analysis, painstaking due diligence, and intricate strategic planning. We formally established Ascend Ventures as our designated acquisition vehicle, staffed exclusively with trusted professionals who fully comprehended the extreme sensitivity of the situation. We secured substantial additional financing to ensure our offer would be overwhelmingly compelling. Global Mergers and Acquisitions reported that several other entities expressed interest. But most were private equity firms renowned for systematically dismantling acquired companies and divesting their component assets. Our offer, while not the highest in purely monetary terms, included explicit commitments to uphold manufacturing operations and safeguard existing jobs. Factors that significantly appealed to several discerning board members deeply concerned about Sterling's enduring legacy. The negotiations proved to be exceedingly delicate and complex. Victor Coleman became my invaluable, unofficial inside source, subtly assisting me in understanding the board's underlying concerns and core priorities without explicitly revealing my direct involvement. He genuinely believed, as I did, that this strategic acquisition represented Sterling's paramount opportunity for comprehensive revitalization. 3 months of relentless, intense negotiation ensued. There were numerous junctures when it seemed the entire deal might precipitously collapse. Competing bids, last-minute demands for concessions, unforeseen financing impediments. The inherent stress was immense, exacerbated by the imperative to maintain outwardly normal family relations throughout the entire covert process. The Harvest Festival was fast approaching, and with it, the annual Sterling family gathering. The timing was either excruciatingly inconvenient or perfectly serendipitous, depending entirely on one's perspective. By my meticulous calculation, if all proceeded according to our intricate plan, the final paperwork would be signed on the morning of Thanksgiving Day itself, mere hours before I would sit across the table from my utterly unsuspecting family. The day before the Harvest Festival, I received the pivotal call from our legal team. The board has accepted our final offer. They're signing the paperwork tomorrow morning. By noon, Horizon Tech Solutions will officially own Sterling Industries. That night, sleep proved elusive. Was I making the unequivocally correct decision? Was I genuinely saving my family's legacy? Or was this, at its core, a form of calculated retribution? Would this complex maneuver mend old, festering wounds? Or would it inevitably create new, deeper ones? Despite these persistent doubts, my unwavering conviction in the inherent business logic remained resolutely solid. Together, Horizon Tech and Sterling could forge something demonstrably greater than either company could ever achieve independently. As dawn broke on the Harvest Festival day, I dressed with meticulous care for what was undoubtedly destined to be a profoundly memorable occasion. My phone continuously buzzed with real-time updates as the final signatures were painstakingly collected and the substantial funds seamlessly transferred. At precisely 11:47 a.m., the message I had been anticipating for months finally arrived. Acquisition complete. Congratulations, Sterling Industries. The venerable company that had unequivocally defined my family for generations, the very corporation that had consistently dismissed my innovative ideas and relentlessly mocked my grand ambitions, now legitimately belonged to me. I drove towards my parents' sprawling estate, a strange, profound calm settling over my being. Whatever transpired next, there was simply no turning back. The future of both companies, and perhaps even the very nature of my relationship with my family, would be irrevocably determined by the events that unfolded over our Thanksgiving dinner. I arrived at the family estate precisely at 2 p.m., the pre-designated time for our Harvest Festival gathering. The familiar winding drive up to the Grand Colonial residence stirred a complex mixture of cherished childhood memories and palpable present tension. I had traversed this journey countless times, but never before as the actual owner of Sterling Industries. My mother greeted me at the stately door with her customary air kiss, her eyes quickly, almost imperceptibly, assessing my chosen attire. A simple yet elegantly tailored navy dress, rather than the power suit she might have conventionally expected. "Amelia, darling, so delighted you could make it," she murmured, ushering me gracefully inside. "Everyone's in the main parlor. Your father's just opened a rare bottle of Glenlivet 25. The presence of such an expensive scotch suggested a celebration, which struck me as curiously odd given Sterling's well-known precarious situation. As I stepped into the parlor, the reason became immediately apparent. My father stood confidently by the grand fireplace, appearing more relaxed than I had seen him in months, while David wore a particularly satisfied smirk. "There she is," my father announced, raising his glass slightly. "The esteemed tech entrepreneur graces us with her presence." "Happy Harvest Festival," I responded, accepting a glass of wine from Sophia. "You all seem in remarkably good spirits." "We've experienced some very positive developments," my father replied vaguely, "but we won't bore you with tedious business talk." David, however, proved utterly incapable of containing himself. "We've definitively secured Sterling's future," he interjected triumphantly. "A private acquisition that will inject significant new capital while ensuring current management remains firmly in place. Father and I will continue to run operations with considerably expanded resources." I took a careful, measured sip of wine, subtly concealing my profound surprise. They clearly possessed no detailed knowledge of the acquisition yet, specifically the actual identity of the real buyer. Global mergers and acquisitions had performed their role exceptionally well, rigorously maintaining Horizon Tech's involvement in strict confidence until the deal's finalization. "That sounds exceptionally promising," I stated neutrally. "When will the official announcement be made?" "The paperwork was finalized just this morning," my father declared. "We'll issue a public announcement next week, immediately following the holiday." The acquiring entity wished to remain anonymous for the time being. Some holding company named Ascend Ventures. I observed Victor Coleman watching me from across the room, the sole individual present who was privy to the complete truth. He offered me an almost imperceptible nod. "Congratulations," I offered. "I'm genuinely pleased things worked out." "Yes, well, some of us understand how to effectively navigate complex business challenges without simply abandoning ship," David interjected pointedly, a clear jab at me. The resounding dinner bell spared me from the necessity of formulating a response. We transitioned to the formal dining room, settling into our customary places around the immense mahogany table. The Harvest Festival spread was, as always, an impressive sight. My mother's meticulous way of maintaining appearances irrespective of the underlying circumstances. Throughout the first course, the conversation remained meticulously superficial. Sophia's children's recent academic achievements, updates on mutual acquaintances, recent marital dissolutions within our social circle, and the unusually mild autumn weather. I felt my phone vibrate repeatedly in my pocket, but I steadfastly resisted the urge to check it, knowing it would be a barrage of updates from Oliver and our legal team concerning the post-acquisition processes now irrevocably in motion. As the main course was served, my father raised his glass once more. "A toast," he announced, "to Sterling Industries, embarking on a new chapter, while remaining steadfastly true to the sterling legacy of unparalleled leadership." The profound irony was almost unbearable, yet I raised my glass with the others. "And how is your little company faring, Amelia?" my father inquired afterward, his tone betraying a genuine curiosity for perhaps the first time. Perhaps the palpable relief of Sterling's apparent salvation had momentarily softened his usual dismissiveness. "Horizon Tech is doing exceptionally well," I replied. "We've experienced a significant expansion recently, actually." "Oh, new clients?" my mother asked politely. "You could certainly say that," I confirmed. "We've acquired some truly substantial new assets." My father nodded absently, clearly not particularly engaged. "Good for you. It's commendable that you found your niche. Still working from home, I presume?" he added with a slight smirk, eyeing my casual attire compared to David's impeccably tailored suit. The precise moment had arrived. I could feel Victor's intense gaze fixed upon me from across the table. "Sometimes," I answered, deliberately pulling out my phone. "In fact, I received a rather important message earlier that I should probably review." I glanced at the screen, feigning to read a new notification rather than the definitive message that had arrived hours prior. I then looked up, meeting my father's gaze directly. "It appears the acquisition of Sterling Industries has been completed successfully. Ascend Ventures now owns 100% of the company." "Yes, we know," David said impatiently, a dismissive wave of his hand. "We signed the papers this morning." "What you don't know," I continued calmly, my voice resonating clearly through the sudden stillness, "is that Ascend Ventures is a holding company created by Horizon Tech Solutions specifically for this acquisition." The silence that followed was absolute, breathtaking. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. David's face contorted first in confusion, then in outright disbelief. My mother's hand instinctively went to her pearl necklace, her nervous tell since my childhood. "What in the world are you talking about?" my father finally demanded, his voice strained. "I'm talking about the fact that as of 11:47 this morning, Horizon Tech Solutions, my company, owns Sterling Industries completely and legally." The explosion I had braced for didn't come immediately. Instead, my father slowly set down his utensils with deliberate care, his face utterly unreadable. "This is a joke," David declares, his voice tight with rising fury. "A sick, twisted joke." "It's not a joke," Victor Coleman interjected, speaking for the very first time, his voice calm and authoritative. "I've been fully aware of this arrangement from the beginning. The board approved the sale unanimously, Robert. Ascend Ventures made the best offer, not just financially, but in terms of preserving Sterling's operations and its dedicated workforce." "You knew?" My father turned to Victor, his voice dangerously quiet, laced with betrayal. "You knew my daughter was behind this, and you said nothing?" "I knew Horizon Tech Solutions was the buyer," Victor corrected, his gaze unwavering. "And yes, I supported the acquisition because it is what is unequivocally best for Sterling. The company desperately needs precisely what Amelia's technology provides." My father's rigid control finally shattered. "This is preposterous! A hostile takeover orchestrated by my own daughter! I will not allow it!" "It's not a hostile takeover," I said evenly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It's a completed acquisition, approved by your board, with contracts personally signed by you this very morning. Sterling is now a subsidiary of Horizon Tech Solutions." I'll fight this, David sputtered, his face flushed an angry red. We'll sue! This is fraud. There is no fraud, Victor stated firmly. All disclosures were legally made. The board was fully informed of the terms. The fact that you didn't investigate the buying company more thoroughly is unfortunate, but it provides no legal basis for challenging the sale. My mother, who had remained utterly silent throughout the escalating confrontation, finally spoke, her voice laced with anguish. Amelia, why would you do this? Why this deception? It was the precise question I had been preparing to answer. Would you have even considered my offer if I had made it openly? I asked, my gaze sweeping across their faces. Would you have even taken the meeting, let alone evaluated the proposal on its merits? My father's silence was answer enough. I did this because Sterling is failing under your management, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Not because you lack business acumen, but because you've steadfastly refused to adapt to a rapidly changing world. I watched you reject innovation, dismiss sustainability as a fleeting trend, and cling tenaciously to outdated methods while your competitors evolved and thrived. And you truly think you can do better? My father challenged, his voice dripping with scorn. You, who have never worked a day in traditional manufacturing? That's precisely why I can do better, I replied, meeting his gaze squarely. Because I am not bound by how things have always been done. I understand both worlds, traditional manufacturing and cutting-edge technology. Horizon Tech has already proven that these seemingly disparate approaches can be integrated successfully. We've done it for dozens of companies already. So this is your revenge, David said bitterly, his voice raw. For us not worshipping your precious ideas. This isn't about revenge, I said, though I acknowledged to myself that personal vindication was at least a small part of my complex motivation. It's about saving Sterling. Without this acquisition, you are mere months away from bankruptcy or a hostile private equity dismantling. I'm offering a path forward that preserves the company, protects its employees, and honors its legacy while finally bringing it into the modern era. Sophia, who had been silently observing the entire exchange, finally spoke, her voice quiet. What happens now? To the company? To us? It was the most practical, grounded question anyone had asked, and I was profoundly grateful for it. Sterling continues operating, but with Horizon Tech's technology and processes fully integrated throughout, I explained. We'll modernize the manufacturing facilities, implement sustainable practices, and strategically position the company for long-term sustainable growth, rather than just short-term profit extraction. I then turned my gaze to my father and brother. As for your roles, that depends entirely on you. I'm not here to fire you or unilaterally push you out. I'm offering a partnership. Your deep manufacturing experience combined with my technological innovation. But it would be a true partnership, not the imbalanced dynamic we've had in the past. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the polished hardwood floor. I will not be patronized by my own daughter in my own home. You may have pulled off this corporate maneuver, but do not expect me to work for you. Not for me, I corrected, my voice soft but firm. With me. There's a fundamental difference. He stared at me for a long, silent moment, decades of complicated emotions passing unspoken between us. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the dining room. David followed, pausing only to hiss, "You'll regret this," before storming out behind him. My mother looked visibly torn between following her husband and remaining at the table. "Amelia," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't understand how you could do this to your family." "I did this for the family, Mother," I countered, my voice resolute. "For Grandfather Arthur's legacy, for the thousands of employees who depend on Sterling for their livelihoods. Sometimes, saving something truly valuable requires radical, painful change." She shook her head sadly, her eyes filled with a deep sorrow, and then departed to find my father. Only Sophia, her husband, and Victor remained at the table with me. "For what it's worth," Sophia said after a long, reflective silence, I think you might be right about Sterling needing to change. Dad and David would never admit it, but things have been bad, worse than they've let on. I know, I said gently. That's precisely why I did this. Victor raised his glass towards me. To the new Sterling Horizon Tech partnership. May it be more successful than either company could have ever been alone. I raised my glass in return, feeling the immense weight of what I had accomplished. The bridges burned, yes, but also the myriad of opportunities created. Whatever came next would undoubtedly be challenging, but for the very first time, I felt that both my personal journey and my family's complex legacy might finally be aligned. The weeks that followed the Harvest Festival were nothing short of chaotic. My father steadfastly refused to take my calls. David retained a lawyer to meticulously investigate potential avenues to invalidate the acquisition, though Victor assured me there were none. My mother reluctantly acted as a weary intermediary, her divided loyalties agonizingly evident in every strained conversation. Meanwhile, I faced the monumental task of managing a massive corporate integration. The public announcement of Horizon Tech's acquisition of Sterling sent shockwaves throughout the entire manufacturing industry. Our stock price soared dramatically as leading analysts praised the strategic combination of Sterling's long-established manufacturing capacity with Horizon Tech's groundbreaking innovative technology. Sterling's employees, initially apprehensive of a traditional post-acquisition purge, were visibly relieved to hear my unwavering commitment to preserving jobs while simultaneously transforming operations. The pervasive uncertainty of recent months gradually gave way to cautious optimism as I presented our comprehensive integration plan at a company-wide meeting. Sterling possesses a proud and rich history, I declared to the assembled employees. But a proud history alone does not guarantee a successful future. Together with Horizon Tech, we can build something that not only honors that cherished legacy, but also creates entirely new possibilities. This isn't about erasing what Sterling has been, it's about evolving into what it needs to become. The integration teams moved with remarkable swiftness, identifying the most critical areas for technological updating. The Ohio facility, which had been hemorrhaging money for months, became our first crucial test case. Within 3 months of implementing Horizon Tech's sophisticated resource management systems and upgrading key equipment, productivity soared by 40%, while energy consumption plummeted by 35%. My father finally agreed to meet me at a neutral location, a private room at the exclusive City Club, a place where generations of Sterlings had conducted pivotal business. He arrived looking noticeably older than I remembered, the tumultuous events of recent months etched deeply into the lines of his face. "You've placed me in an impossible position, Amelia," he stated without preamble, his voice weary. "I cannot fight you without utterly destroying the company I've devoted my entire life to, but I cannot simply surrender control either." "I'm not asking you to surrender," I replied, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm offering you a specific role that precisely leverages your immense experience and invaluable relationships. You know the traditional manufacturing world better than I ever will. Those connections and that profound knowledge are exceptionally valuable." "As what? Some figurehead chairman emeritus?" he asked bitterly, his eyes narrowed. "As Chief Legacy Officer," I stated clearly, "responsible for maintaining key client relationships, preserving the institutional knowledge that makes Sterling unique, and ensuring that as we modernize, we don't lose the core values that truly built the company." He looked skeptical. "And actual authority? Defined areas of authority?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Not unilateral control, but not ceremonial either. Real input on strategic decisions, particularly regarding long-standing clients and partners." He considered this, slowly swirling the scotch in his glass. "And David?" This was a more delicate subject. My brother's resistance had been far more aggressive than my father's, his threats more explicit. "David needs to decide if he can adapt to this new reality. If he can, there's a significant place for him overseeing traditional manufacturing operations. If not—" I left the sentence unfinished, allowing the implication to hang in the air. My father nodded slowly. He's always been more rigid than me, more certain of his rightness, like looking in a mirror sometimes. It was the closest thing to genuine self-awareness I had ever heard from him. Will you consider my offer? I asked. I'll think about it, he said, which, coming from Robert Sterling, was practically an affirmative. David's decision took considerably longer. After exhausting all his legal options and finally realizing that the acquisition was irreversible, he disappeared to his lake house for 2 weeks. When he returned, he formally requested a meeting at the Sterling headquarters. I prepared for an inevitable confrontation, but was genuinely surprised when he arrived with a detailed presentation outlining a hybrid manufacturing model that ingeniously combined some of Horizon Tech's innovations with Sterling's traditional strengths. I still fundamentally believe you went about this all wrong, he said bluntly, his voice devoid of its usual anger. But I've spent my entire life preparing to lead Sterling. I'm not walking away just because the company's structure has changed. His meticulously prepared proposal had undeniable merit, demonstrating far more adaptability than I had ever given him credit for. We negotiated a new role for him as Chief Operating Officer of Manufacturing, reporting to Oliver as overall COO, but with substantial autonomy over his division. Sophia, to my surprise, asked to join the newly formed Sustainability Communications Department, bringing her extensive foundation experience and crucial social connections to help position the new Sterling Horizon Tech entity with traditional clients who might initially be skeptical of our integrated approach. Even my mother found a meaningful role hosting events that help bridge the cultural gap between the old-school manufacturing executives and the technology-oriented innovators now seamlessly working together. The transformative integration wasn't always smooth sailing. There were numerous heated arguments about implementation timelines, persistent resistance from middle managers comfortably entrenched in old methods, and occasional covert sabotage attempts from those who feared change. But the undeniable financial results spoke volumes. Within the first year, the combined company's profitability increased by a remarkable 28%, while our comprehensive environmental impact metrics showed significant improvements across every single category. More personally satisfying, however, was witnessing the profound cultural evolution. Engineers from Horizon Tech collaboratively working alongside veteran manufacturing experts from Sterling, each group enthusiastically learning from the other. Young programmers excited to see their complex code directly translated into tangible physical production improvements. Factory floor workers embracing cutting-edge technology that made their demanding jobs safer and remarkably more efficient. The most profound change, perhaps, transpired within my relationship with my father. Our weekly strategy meetings, initially tense and formal, gradually evolved into more open, candid exchanges. He began to genuinely acknowledge the immense value of the innovations I consistently brought to the table, while I, in turn, gained a newfound appreciation for the deep, invaluable industry knowledge he possessed. 6 months after the acquisition, he unexpectedly stopped by my office unannounced. I had taken over his old space but had completely redesigned it, replacing the heavy dark wood and formidable leather with a bright open-concept layout that included a small innovation lab where we tested miniature versions of factory floor improvements. I wouldn't have done it this way, he said, looking around the transformed space, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes. I know, I replied, bracing myself for his customary criticism. But he continued unexpectedly, his voice softer. But I can see how it works, for what you're building. Different times, different approaches. Coming from Robert Sterling, this was the equivalent of a resounding standing ovation. Later that same week, at a major industry conference, I overheard him talking to Eleanor Thorne, my former rival who had once called me dangerous. My daughter sees things differently than I do, my father was saying, his voice surprisingly reflective. Took me too long to realize that different didn't mean wrong. She's building something I couldn't have imagined. But maybe that's exactly what was needed. Eleanor noticed me listening and smiled knowingly. The student becomes the teacher. My father turned, seeing me for perhaps the very first time, not as his rebellious daughter, but as a formidable business leader in my own right. More like old and new finding a way forward together, he replied. That night I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought me to this pivotal point, from the family disappointment to the undisputed owner of the family legacy, from being constantly dismissed to finally being profoundly respected. The ultimate satisfaction wasn't simply in proving them wrong, though that element certainly existed. The deeper fulfillment came from successfully transforming Sterling into something that could genuinely thrive in a perpetually changing world, while meticulously preserving what was truly valuable from its storied past. The entire experience taught me that true, lasting success isn't solely measured by proving critics wrong or accumulating immense power. It's about creating something profoundly meaningful that outlasts individual egos, including my own. My grandfather had built Sterling to manufacture products that genuinely improved people's lives. By seamlessly integrating sustainability and innovation, we were honoring that fundamental mission in a contemporary relevant context. As for familial relationships, they continued their complex evolution. Some wounds healed over time, while others remained tender, a subtle reminder of past pains. But there was a new solid foundation of professional respect that miraculously created the necessary space for personal reconciliation. Not perfect, not complete, but undeniable progress. I realized that in the dynamic world of business, just as in the intricate tapestry of family, the most powerful and enduring transformations happen not when one side decisively defeats the other, but when seemingly opposing values find ingenious ways to strengthen and elevate each other. Traditional craftsmanship enhanced by cutting-edge technology, established relationships energized by fresh, innovative approaches. Legacy and innovation no longer fierce competitors, but true, indispensable partners. What's your own story of being underestimated and later triumphantly proving your worth? Has someone ever dismissed your creative ideas, only to witness their undeniable success later on? Please share your experience by dropping a comment below. And if this compelling story of perseverance and profound transformation resonated deeply with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life business journeys and inspiring narratives, and consider sharing this video with someone who might genuinely need encouragement to trust their own unique vision, even when others don't quite see it yet. Thank you for listening to my story. And always remember, sometimes the very people who don't believe in you are, paradoxically, the ones who need your success the most.